Hi everyone, Miss Chu here with Keelani, and we are going to continue my 5th grade mask lesson. This is part 2. If you have not watched part number 1, I suggest watching the part number 1 video at our YouTube channel, Triple K Art Studios, so you can get your armature built. So the materials that you're going to need for part 2 of this lesson, you will need your armature. Hopefully you got it finished. It was just a bunch of newspaper and we taped it together. We're going to use this to construct our mask. You are also going to need a plastic bag, some newspaper. You will need some flour, some water, a mixing bowl, a measuring cup, and something to stir the mixture together. So we're going to make our own papier-mâché paste today. It's really simple to make papier-mâché paste. We're going to take 1 cup of flour, place it in the bowl, and then I'm going to combine it with 2 cups of water. So there's 1 and 2. Take a whisk or a spoon, mix it all together. So 1 part flour, 2 parts water. Mix it all together. It should be a nice milky texture. It should not be lumpy. Mix it for a couple of minutes, get it nice and smooth. And it's ready to go. Now we are going to need to take our newspaper and we are going to need to tear it into strips so you can figure out what direction those fibers run in that paper and you can get some straight tears. I'm going to tear a 4-inch, maybe a 5-inch piece. This is a perfect size for what we need it for. But don't go too big because then you can run into some problems. Torn into strips, we're going to put a plastic bag over our armature. In the last video I discussed an armature. A lot of artists, designers, architects use armatures. Most armatures are permanent, but for this lesson our armature is temporary because we are going to be removing it after this papier-mâché dries. So we're going to take the armature and place it inside the plastic bag, and you want to make sure that the flat side of the bag is on the top part of the armature. Because what we're going to do is we are going to smooth out the plastic and tighten it up. And then we're just going to roll it on the back, just spin it. Just like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to build the papier-mâché mask on top of this armature. I'm going to place my armature on the table. Grab my paste, take 1 strip of newspaper, stick it down into the paste. Make sure you get it nice and saturated. That means it soaks up that paste. I'm going to take my handy dandy squeegee tool and we're going to squeegee off about half of the paste. You don't need it completely dry. You want to squeegee off about half of it. So if you think about all this paste on here, just try to remove half of it. Then we're going to place it on top of our armature. You need to take your fingers and give it a nice massage. Make sure that that strip is forming to that surface. It should not be sticking. It's not glue, this is paste. So what's going to happen is however this strip is setting, it's going to dry that way. My next strip is the most important part of this whole process. I'm going to place it in the paste, get it nice and saturated. Squeegee about half of the paste off, and then I need to intersect this strip with my other strip. That way it can grip onto it. In math, we learn about the difference between parallel lines and intersecting lines. Parallel lines mean that the 2 lines never touch. Intersecting lines mean that they do touch. They intersect over the top of each other. The definition of intersecting lines are two lines that share exactly one point. This shared point is called the point of intersection. We need to make sure that our first two strips are intersecting. As you can see, I have this blue strip and then I have just the regular papered strip. The blue strip is overlapped on top of the previous strip and they are intersecting. You need to make sure that all of your strips are touching each other and they are intersecting. That way they can grip onto each other. If all of the strips are side by side, they're just going to fall apart because they don't have anything to grip onto. So I'm going to continue to put as many strips on this armature as I can, and I'm going to focus on one consistent layer. You don't want to blob a bunch of strips on top of each other for this, because what'll happen is it'll have a hard time. That's what'll happen. What happens is it has a hard time drying and it'll start to mold. And we don't want a moldy mask, especially in Mom's kitchen. So you want to make sure you get one consistent thin layer, and then we can go back and we can apply a second layer if needed. With your papier-mâché, it should resemble the shape of your armature. If it does not, you might need to tighten up that plastic bag and you might need to push down and give it more of a massage. I made one consistent layer all around. The further down you go on all sides, the better, because the next step we will trim it once this papier-mâché is ready for the next step. As you can see, I have a huge mess, but I'm cleaning that up. So you might want to put some newspaper over your workspace if maybe your mom or grandma has to clean up your mess. You can be smart about that. I have to clean it up anyway, so I made a mess. The next step after this part is to allow this to dry. Place it on a piece of newspaper somewhere out of the way so you don't have to touch it a lot to move it. It needs to dry overnight, and then it should be ready for a second layer tomorrow. You can let it just dry overnight and then go right back to that second layer. So some questions that arise during this process. For one, a lot of students ask about the size of their strips. So if you take a look at my strip, 1 inch to 2 inches wide, no wider than that. A lot of students make the mistake of getting this great big strip and they try to place it on it and it doesn't flatten out. It doesn't form to the surface that they want because their strip of paper is too big. They need to be smaller. So this size is a really good size. This is a really good reference point for the size of your strip. This worked very nicely. I did this very quickly. It was very simple for me to do. I didn't have any trouble. Another question students ask, well, Miss Chu, you said that you aren't supposed to overlap, but I overlapped a couple of times. That's okay, as long as you're working on consistency, because this needs to be able to dry. Consistency means it needs to be the same all the way around. So if you have a couple of strips overlapping, that's not going to be an issue, but if you have a big blob of 10 to 15 strips right up here, it's not going to dry and it will get moldy. And you know, a moldy mask is not the end of the world. Just grab some Lysol spray, spray it down, wipe it off with a paper towel, and paint over it. It's not the end of the world. It's happened before. So get this part 2 finished. If you have any questions, please email me. I want to see pictures. I want to see you guys doing these lessons. This is very important to 5th graders at Lost Creek. If you are not a student at Lost Creek or you're not a 5th grader, I would love to know that as well. Let me know how this worked. This is completely different than the actual process that we do in the art room at Lost Creek Elementary. In the art room, we actually build the mask inside of a mold, which this to me seemed a lot easier than using the mold. So we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. I hope you're having fun getting messy. Do this with your family. I can't wait to see these finished masks. I'll see you in part 3. Bye!